If saving money made people rich, the most disciplined employees in the world would quietly become financially free. The careful planner, the spreadsheet optimizer, the person who never misses a payment, the one who clips coupons, avoids debt, tracks every dollar. They would win, but look around. They survive, they stabilize, they endure. Very few escape, and this is where the confusion begins. Because the advice sounds intelligent. Spend less than you earn. Save consistently. Invest conservatively. Be patient. On the surface, it feels mathematically flawless, but wealth is not purely mathematical, it's structural. And most people are trying to solve a structural problem with a budgeting tool. Let's slow this down. Imagine two people. Person A earns $60,000 a year. They save 20%, that's $12,000 annually. Person B earns $60,000 a year. They save 5%. That's $3,000 annually. Traditional advice says Person A is winning, but here's the question nobody asks. What if both of them are trapped in the same income ceiling? What if both are playing a game where their earning power barely grows? Then the difference between 5% and 20% is not freedom, it's comfort level inside the same cage. Saving money is defensive behavior. Defense is important. Defense prevents collapse. But defense does not create expansion. Wealth is expansion, and expansion requires something completely different. Leverage. Now here's where it gets uncomfortable. Most people are told to focus on saving because it feels controllable. You can't control the economy. You can't control your company. You can't control inflation, but you can control your spending. So you shrink your life to create the illusion of control. You negotiate your phone bill. You cancel subscriptions. You delay upgrades. You postpone experiences. You feel responsible. You feel disciplined. You feel intelligent. But discipline applied to a limited structure still produces limited outcomes. Let's talk about scale. If you save $500 a month, you feel productive. But $500 a month will never change your life. It can protect you from emergencies. It can reduce anxiety. It can create breathing room, and that's valuable. But protection and freedom are not the same thing. Protection keeps you safe inside the system. Freedom allows you to redesign the system. Most financial education never explains this distinction because the system benefits from stability. A workforce that saves carefully but never seeks leverage is predictable. Predictable people are manageable, and manageable people don't disrupt structures. This is not a conspiracy. It's incentives. Employers prefer stable employees. Banks prefer predictable borrowers. Governments prefer steady taxpayers. Nobody builds a curriculum around teaching you how to outgrow the structure. They teach you how to behave responsibly inside it. Now let's examine the psychological effect. When your primary focus is saving, your subconscious accepts a quiet belief. My income is fixed. You stop asking, how do I double my earning capacity? Instead, you ask, how do I reduce expenses by 8%? One question expands your world, the other compresses it. Over time, compression becomes identity. You become the frugal one. But frugality without leverage can quietly turn into fear. Fear of spending, fear of risk, fear of investing in yourself, fear of uncertainty. And wealth does not grow in fear. It grows in calculated expansion. Look at history. The individuals who created massive wealth did not optimize spending first. They optimized value creation. They asked, how do I increase output? How do I build systems? How do I create assets? How do I detach income from time? Saving money is linear. Wealth is nonlinear. Linear growth is slow, predictable, capped. Nonlinear growth is uncomfortable, uncertain, scalable. Most people choose linear because it feels safer. But safety has a ceiling. And here's the most dangerous illusion of all. Saving gives you progress signals. Your bank balance slowly rises. You feel movement. But if inflation rises faster than your savings growth, you are running on a treadmill, moving, sweating, going nowhere. And this is where decades disappear, because the habit of saving becomes the goal itself. Instead of asking, how do I become valuable at scale? You ask, How do I avoid losing what I already have? One mindset builds wealth, the other defends survival. There is nothing wrong with saving, but confusing it for a wealth strategy is where people lose 20 years. You cannot shrink your way to abundance. You cannot budget your way into financial freedom. You cannot outsave structural limitations. You must outgrow them. And that requires something entirely different than what most people were taught, because even increasing your income, even getting promotions, even switching jobs, can still keep you trapped. And that's what we're about to break down next. Why earning more money, without understanding leverage, can actually deepen the illusion instead of breaking it. Earning more money feels like the obvious solution. If saving isn't enough, then the answer must be income. Get a raise, switch companies, start a side hustle, climb the ladder, increase the number. And for a while, that works. Your lifestyle improves, your stress drops, your confidence rises. But here's the uncomfortable pattern no one talks about. For most people, income growth is followed almost immediately by lifestyle expansion. You move to a better apartment, you upgrade your car, you eat out more often, you justify convenience, nothing extreme, just incremental upgrades. You tell yourself, I worked hard for this, and you did, but something subtle just happened. Your expenses rose to match your new income, your baseline shifted, and now your new lifestyle requires your new income to survive. You didn't gain freedom, you upgraded the cage. This is called lifestyle inflation, but that phrase is too soft. What it really is structural reinforcement, because now quitting feels riskier. Experimenting feels irresponsible. Taking bold bets feels dangerous. Your higher income has increased your dependency. You feel more successful, but you are more locked in. Let's examine a common scenario. Someone earns $50,000 a year. They feel pressure. They feel limited. They work hard. They reach $90,000. That should be life-changing. But instead of feeling free, they feel slightly more comfortable because their fixed costs quietly climbed. Better home, better neighborhood, better obligations. And here's the key shift. When your cost of living rises, your risk tolerance falls, and risk tolerance is directly connected to opportunity. The wealthiest individuals don't just earn more. They design systems where income is not directly tied to hours. That's leverage. Leverage means one unit of effort produces multiple units of return. Salary is linear. Leverage is multiplicative. If you work 8 hours, you get paid for 8 hours. That's controlled income. But if you build something, a business, an asset, a platform, an investment system, one decision can pay you repeatedly. Now, this doesn't mean everyone needs to start a company tomorrow. It means the game must shift from earn more to earn differently. Most people increase income inside the same linear structure. They stay employees. They trade more responsibility for higher pay. They accept more stress for more money. But time remains the bottleneck. There are only 24 hours in a day. You cannot double your hours. You cannot infinitely increase your energy. Linear growth eventually hits a wall. And here's the deeper psychological layer. When your income increases, your identity often locks into that role. You become the manager, the consultant, the director. Your title becomes your stability. And the higher the title, the harder it becomes to experiment. Because now you have status to protect. This is how high earners can remain financially fragile. High income, low leverage, high dependency. If the paycheck stops, the structure collapses. That's not wealth. That's sophisticated employment. And here's the most dangerous illusion. As long as money is coming in, you feel like you're progressing. But progress without ownership is temporary. Ownership changes the rules. Ownership creates asymmetry. When you own equity, assets, intellectual property, systems, your upside is uncapped. Salary has a ceiling. Ownership has scaling potential. This is why two people earning the same income can end up in completely different financial realities. One optimizes consumption, the other accumulates assets. One upgrades lifestyle, the other upgrades leverage. And over 10 years, the gap becomes exponential. Most financial advice stops at earn more and save more. But it rarely asks, do you control the engine generating your income? Because that question is disruptive. It forces you to confront dependency, dependency on a company, dependency on a role, dependency on stability, and stability feels safe. But long-term wealth is built by those who slowly reduce dependency and increase leverage, not recklessly, not emotionally, strategically. Here's where most people hesitate. Leverage feels uncertain, saving feels certain, salary feels certain. Leverage feels unpredictable, and humans prefer certainty, even if that certainty guarantees limitation. But there is a difference between reckless risk and calculated expansion. The wealthy study asymmetry. They look for situations where the downside is limited, but the upside is scalable. That's not gambling. That's structural intelligence. And until you shift from income optimization to leverage creation, you may earn more, save more, and still feel stuck. Because the real constraint was never just income, it was the design of your financial engine, and the design can be changed. But before we talk about how, there's a deeper psychological force that quietly pulls people back into linear thinking, even after they understand leverage. And if you don't recognize it, you'll default to safety again. Even after understanding leverage, most people still return to safety. Not because they lack intelligence, but because they are conditioned for predictability. From childhood, you are rewarded for compliance. Finish your assignments, follow instructions, meet expectations. You are graded on accuracy, not on asymmetric thinking. School trains you for reliability. Reliability is valuable, but it is not scalable. By the time you enter the workforce, your nervous system associates stability with survival. A steady paycheck feels like oxygen. And when something feels like oxygen, you protect it, even if it limits you. Now layer social pressure on top. Your peers measure success through visible consumption. Car upgrades, apartment upgrades, lifestyle upgrades. Nobody applauds invisible leverage. Nobody celebrates, I invested in a system that might pay off in 5 years. They celebrate, I bought something. So even when someone earns more, they unconsciously spend to signal progress. Because signaling is immediate, leverage is delayed. Humans are wired for immediate reinforcement. That's why saving feels good. That's why spending feels good. That's why promotions feel good. But building scalable assets often feels uncertain and quiet. There is no applause, just delayed compounding. And compounding is psychologically uncomfortable. It requires patience without visible validation. This is where most high-potential individuals lose momentum. They understand leverage intellectually, but emotionally they crave stability and recognition. So they return to what feels familiar. Linear income, predictable growth, manageable ambition. There's another layer, scarcity memory. If you grew up watching financial stress, instability, uncertainty, your brain may associate risk with danger, even if the risk is calculated. So when an opportunity appears, your logic says, this makes sense. But your nervous system whispers, this feels unsafe. And humans follow feelings faster than logic. This is why some people, even after earning substantial income, never step into ownership. They optimize the familiar. They master budgeting. They master negotiation. They master corporate performance. But they never master scale. Because scale requires tolerance for uncertainty, and uncertainty activates old fears. Now consider identity ceilings. Every person carries an internal number of what they believe is enough. Not logically, emotionally. If you subconsciously believe that people like you don't become extremely wealthy, you will unconsciously self-regulate. You'll avoid visibility, avoid bold moves, avoid asymmetrical bets. You'll tell yourself you're being practical, but you're maintaining identity equilibrium. This is not about greed, it's about perceived permission. Many capable individuals never give themselves permission to expand beyond their environment. So they save, they earn, they upgrade modestly, and they stop there. Not because they can't go further, but because further feels unfamiliar, and unfamiliar feels unsafe. This is why knowledge alone does not create wealth. Information is everywhere. Execution is rare. Sustained expansion is rarer. The difference between those who remain comfortable and those who build real leverage is not IQ. It's psychological tolerance, tolerance for ambiguity, tolerance for delayed reward, tolerance for temporary instability. The wealthy don't eliminate fear. They build systems that function despite it. And this brings us to a critical shift. If saving doesn't create wealth, if income alone doesn't create wealth, if intelligence alone doesn't create wealth, then what does? The answer isn't a tactic, it's a framework, a different way of structuring your financial life entirely, one that separates survival from scale, one that builds protection first but does not stop there, one that treats income as fuel, not destination. And if you don't consciously design this framework, you will default to the safest available path, which is exactly what most people do. Now we need to break down what an actual wealth structure looks like, not motivational advice, not generic rules, but a clear model for transitioning from linear income to scalable positioning. So what does a real wealth structure actually look like? Not hype, not shortcuts, not overnight transformation. A structure, because wealth is engineered, not wished into existence. The first layer is protection. This is where most advice begins, and unfortunately, where most people stop. Protection means emergency reserves, basic investing, risk management, insurance, low controlled liabilities. This layer reduces fragility. It lowers anxiety. It stabilizes decision-making, but protection is the foundation, not the building. If you spend your entire life perfecting the foundation, you never construct anything above it. The second layer is expansion. This is where income stops being the goal and starts becoming fuel. Instead of asking, how can I save more? You ask, how can I increase my earning power? Not through working longer, but through increasing value density. Value density means, how much value do you create per unit of effort? A skilled surgeon has high value density. A top-tier consultant has high value density. A software founder has high value density. The question shifts from hours to impact. This often requires skill stacking, strategic positioning, geographic arbitrage, industry leverage. It requires intentional discomfort, because expansion feels unstable at first. But expansion without ownership still has a ceiling, which leads to the third layer. Ownership. This is where asymmetry lives. Equity, intellectual property, digital assets, businesses, investments that compound beyond your labor. Ownership separates time from income. When you own a piece of a system, your upside is not directly capped by hours. This is the shift most people delay for decades. They stay in layer 1, occasionally touch layer 2, avoid layer 3 entirely because ownership feels risky. But here's the inversion. Not owning anything scalable is the bigger long-term risk. If your entire financial life depends on active effort, your growth is permanently throttled. Now, this does not mean reckless moves. It means gradual reallocation. Income funds, protection. Protection stabilizes you. Stability funds, expansion. Expansion creates capital. Capital buys ownership. This is a cycle, not an event, and it requires conscious design. Without design, you default to consumption, and consumption feels like progress because it is visible. Ownership feels slow because compounding is invisible in the beginning, but compounding is where wealth quietly accelerates. The early years look unimpressive. Then the curve bends, and when it bends aggressively. Most people quit before the bend. They return to comfort, return to predictability, return to linear thinking. Because linear growth feels fair, compounding feels uncertain, but fairness has limits. Leverage does not care about fairness. It rewards structure. Now here is the final truth. Saving money is not wrong. It is incomplete. Earning more money is not wrong. It is insufficient. Wealth requires alignment across protection, expansion, and ownership. Miss one, and the system weakens. Focus on only one, and the structure stalls. The goal is not to become reckless. The goal is to become intentional, To stop optimizing inside a cage and start redesigning the cage itself. And that shift, from defense to architecture, is where financial freedom actually begins. If this perspective challenged something you believed, don't rush past it. Reevaluate your structure, not your budget, not your subscriptions, your structure. Because once you see the difference between income and leverage, between saving and scaling, you cannot unsee it. And from that point forward, every financial decision becomes clearer.